Welcome to Tales on the Towpath, the podcast where every mile tells a story.
We're two runners who spend a lot of time out here on the C&O Canal Towpath, talking about training, racing, and everything that happens between the miles.
From early morning runs to the stories that keep us moving.
This is where endurance meets inspiration, one step, one tail at a time.
So lace up and join us on the path, because every trail has a story, and this one's ours.
Welcome back. I'm Adam Lowe.
And I'm Chris Earle, and today we're going to enter the second part of our three-part series on the JFK 50. And of course, if we're talking about the JFK 50, we have to have the one and only Katie Lowe join us. So welcome back, Katie.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course. Thanks for joining us again. All right, we are going to go through our races from Saturday at the JFK 50 miler. We're going to walk you through our race recaps from race morning, going down to the start, the AT, the towpath, the road, running down the home stretch, and going through some of our most memorable moments before hitting the after party today. So I'm excited about this one. I know how I did out there and what was going on through my head, but I'm excited to hear everything that Chris was going through and some more of the insight about what Katie was going through on Saturday as well. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So let's start with Katie, if that's okay. Tell us a little bit about race morning early on, whatever you would like to kind of go through and explain up until race gun goes off at 6:30.
Okay, well, whenever we first got up, we got up way early because we had to leave the house at I think 5 o'clock was the goal time to leave. And for me, that means getting up probably about 4:15. But what I do to set myself up for success is race morning, if I have to remember to grab things, pack things, it's something's gonna be forgotten. So for a race this big, this important, something that I know my mind might be scattered, I had everything set out. My entire outfit that I was gonna wear was set out. I had my bottle with a tailwind already filled. Breakfast was made, it just needed to be heated up, and then I was ready to go. So it was just left very little thinking in the process. I just had to put it all together, already set up, ready to go. When we went out to Boonesboro, we parked, we went to our friend Billy and Spice's house, had a little gathering with some other people who went there to stay warm and just kind of congregate, talk about any last minute nerves or whatever, and then headed out to the start line, take a drop bag to the fire department, and then go wait for them to call us into the road to get ready for the gun to go off.
All right, Chris, go ahead. How about you?
So very similar. I was a little bit nervous I would forget something that early in the morning. So I actually did something I don't normally do for a race. I made a list the night before and made sure I had everything checked off before we went out and got in the car. We left the house around 5:30. I think we were a little bit closer maybe than you all were, but I also got there a little bit later than you all. So I only had a couple of minutes to meet up with you all over at Billy and Spice's place. I was a little disappointed. I just missed out on, I heard that Hans Troyer had stopped by for a minute. I'm so bummed that I missed that. But, it really was just about getting focused and getting out there and being in the right spot at the right time for when the gun went off. And there's something really special about when you're out there, with the pack, waiting for the start, the lights are all different colors, right? Because of it's still dark and the sun is just starting to come up. So there's a little bit of color in the sky, but made for some good photo opportunities. And it was fun to just stay there and huddle up with the masses, just anxiously awaiting that gun to go off. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, I had a very similar morning to Katie. She's up at 4:15. I'm also up at 4:15, making sure that everything is ready to go as well, helping to load the car and get ready. And then for me, I didn't really get nervous until we were sitting at Billy's house, and then kind of the nerves kicked in, and I was at one point, I think I was ready to go, and we still had plenty of time to get up to the start line, but I was ready to get away from some people. And Katie could kind of tell that, and she was trying to get me to calm down, but it just probably no use at that point. Just those pre-race nerves kicked in probably about 20 minutes before the race happened.
Oh yeah, he definitely went over and sat like by himself, not being social, which is not really Adam like. And he was just very quiet and getting serious. So I knew he was starting to get nervous. And he hadn't been really like that leading up to the race day. But then also he's like looking at his watch. He's like, it's a 5 till 6. Do you want to go over there? Do we need to get it? And I'm like, Adam, it's literally 2 blocks away. He's like, well, we have to drop off our drop bags. I'm like, yeah, that makes it, I don't know, 3 blocks that we have to walk. We don't have to go quite yet. Like, they won't even let us in the road yet. So, but yeah, his nerves were definitely kicking in, but it took that long. So I think I had gotten my nerves out days in advance. I kind of had the nerves earlier in the week, and then midweek, probably Wednesday, Adam sent me a finish line video of me from 2 years ago, and when I watched that and I saw the happiness on my face when I was coming into the finish line and how big I was smiling, all my nerves turned directly over to excitement. So that really, really helped me to actually see that, and the remainder of the time, Thursday, Friday, up until the gun went off this time, I was just really excited.
All right, so now we are, I guess, at the start line. So we can talk kind of from the start line, maybe the pre-race jitters that I just kind of mentioned a little bit, and seeing a bunch of people that we knew, and go over the feelings standing on Main Street with 1,200 other people before the gun goes off, and then run us through all the way up to South Mountain. So, Chris, do you want to go first on this one?
It's very overwhelming for me when you're standing there waiting those last couple of minutes before the gun goes off. Like, you're about to do something special. You can't start yet, and it's gonna hurt, but it's gonna feel really good when you get done. And so I go through like an emotional roller coaster, standing there on the line, like from joy to anxiety to, a little bit of, getting a little bit emotional. But then once the gun goes off, it's probably very different for you, Adam, because you start much closer to the front than I do. But the gun goes off, and then you like pause because you got to wait for the people in front of you to start running. And so that for me almost is a calming effect right away because you have that anxiety, you're tensed, you're ready to go, and then you have to wait. And so for really those first 2-3 minutes, you're just trying to find a path where you can get into a nice, easy, cadence and work your way up through. And I think it's good. It keeps me from going out too fast and, letting the excitement overwhelm and set myself up for a bad day. But it also is a little bit nerve-wracking as you're trying to find the people who are gonna run at about the same pace as you. After that, though, once you get going, then it's just, there's a little bit of there's a lot of hill, right? You go down the hill as you're coming out of town, but then you immediately start that climb back up, and it goes on forever, and with it being dark, right, it doesn't look the same, so the landmarks don't look quite the same, so you're never really quite sure how close you're getting, at least for me, because I've only done it a few times. But overall, I thought it went pretty well for me. I compared my split when I got to the AT to what I did last year, and it was within 1 second. So I guess I can't be too disappointed with that. How about you guys?
Go
I
ahead,
can
Katie.
say that whenever Adam and I always take a traditional pre-race selfie together before we part ways, because like you said, he does start up towards the front, and I'm normally, about midway back, I think. Under normal circumstances, I run races by myself. I don't ever go out and like run with somebody during a race. So I typically line up if I see somebody I know where I'm lining up, then I kind of chat with them beforehand, but then we go our separate ways. But this race, I had made a plan to actually run with my friends and training partners, Kara and Kelsey, and we were going to start together. We were going to go over the AT together and then potentially try to stay together for as long as possible. But when Adam and I went to do our drop bags and then go to the start line, I had separated from them, so I didn't know where they were, and then I'm in this sea of people. I'm looking everywhere. I can't find them because there's so many people. I text, but sometimes texts, aren't going through or we're all getting ready to race, so we're putting our cell phones away. I was like, "Welp, I guess that plan might be going out the window. I might just be going it alone the whole time." And the real reason we were gonna stay together is because last year I just took off like a bat out of hell over the AT and I smashed my previous time on the AT, but I think it was to the detriment of my canal ability to cover that marathon distance on the canal. So this year I wanted to hold back just a little bit. And the Kara and Kelsey, they are so, so good about staying controlled at the beginning of a race and running relaxed over the AT. This was Kelsey's 11th JFK, and it was Kara's 8th, I believe. So they're also very experienced. So if I stayed with them, I knew I was able to trust them more than myself to run a relaxed AT portion. So I was looking for them. Finally, I got a text. They told me where they were. I met up with them and we headed up to South Mountain. I actually ran up to South Mountain a couple minutes, probably about 2 minutes slower than I did the previous year. But that was because I made sure to stay with them. We walked the steeper parts of the hills instead of running the whole way up like I did the year before. But the one of the fun things about going up South Mountain is I saw so many people that I know. We passed just person after person that we knew that was running the race or were like kind of walking or jogging along with them up that hill. So it was really kind of fun because I'd see people and we'd talk to them and then say, hey, if they're walking, I know it's okay because I know they're very experienced. And so it was just very like the community was all there and that was a fun aspect right before getting onto the 8.
Yeah, and
How about you, Adam?
for me, like I know going to the start line, I try to get up there as close as I can. So I'm probably 2, 3 rows back. Sometimes I get right on the starting line at these races. Last year I was right at the start line of JFK. This year, for some reason, it seemed like we were back a little bit from the mat, and then a bunch of people kind of came in and got right in front of us. But I was standing next to Dan Green and Hans Troyer and Cal Neff, and Samir and I were right there. And then I saw Sean Dorr and a few other people that I know, but standing right there with the big guns, and we were like 3 rows back. So yeah, you're right, Chris. Like when the gun went off, like we were gone. There was no moment to think about, you know what, what we were doing. We were there to run. So going up South Mountain, it was kind of just a nice little warm up run, and we're all trying to just go together and kind of feel everything out and make sure everything's clicking. I ran with the CVAC team all the way up there, so Henry and Brian and Trent and Samir was with us, and we were just kind of going up there talking, relaxed, and just making it up to the mountain. And yeah, I mean, easy running. Felt easy. It was about just under an 8-minute pace, and we got up there in about 19 minutes and 50 seconds was my split. So a little bit slower than maybe I had liked, but I don't know about you guys, but I could feel the humidity or something, or maybe it was just the moisture in the air. But I was sweating already when I got to the top of South Mountain, more than I remembered in the past. How about you guys?
Yeah, it was very, very foggy out that morning. But I didn't notice the humidity, but I typically don't. So, but just to give a little bit of perspective, how fast Adam said he made it up there, I think I went through the timing mat at South Mountain at 27 minutes and some seconds. So that was a couple minutes. I think it was 25 something the year before. So about 2 minutes slower than I had done the year before.
Yeah, and I was 22:11 at the timing mat, but yeah, definitely, Adam. The heavy cloud cover and the fog, I thought made a difference. Maybe it made the air a little thicker too. So, but it definitely, I felt like I was running better than last year, and was surprised when my time was a little bit slower when I got to the top.
I actually felt that same exact way. I thought that I was, moving the exact same or maybe even faster as before, and I was a little shocked when I wasn't under what I had expected to be, but it was good either way. So, all right, so now we are 2.5 miles into the race, and we get on that first little trail section, and then we are on the road at Lamb's Knoll, and then on to the AT. So, Katie, do you want to go over your experience with those, I guess, 13 miles?
Yeah, sure. When we get on the AT, I was right with Kara and Kelsey just as planned. We also had Brandon with us, and there were others who were in the general vicinity, but Brandon, Kara, and Kelsey and I were committed to staying together. So we were just going to work the trail portion, the road, the fire roads, and then the last trail portion together. And we really did a good job. Of course, I'm somebody who when I get out there with a group that's running a similar pace, I tend to take the lead a little bit because I like to see a few feet in front of me. I don't like to be right behind somebody. So I would get a little ahead, but I'd always be kind of turning around when it was safe to look. I'm somebody who well, we all should be probably on the AT just watching the ground the whole time so we're not misstepping. There's a lot of roots, a lot of rocks. I'd say when we got to the fire roads, the real steep, long climb, which is the most elevation on the course, I was around the people I was with, but then all kinds of other people, and I would chit chat here and there, or somebody would say something about the elevation or the steepness and be like, "Yeah, well, it's gonna flatten out a little bit, but don't be fooled, it's not over." And then it's gonna do it again, and don't be fooled, it's not over. You'll know when you get to the top. So it takes a while, but it won't that'll be the worst climb that you have the whole time. So it was just kind of fun talking to people who were out there as their first time and were not experienced with it. But then what happened was we end up picking up another person we know, Sam, and she started running with us as well. And then Sam and I just kind of got going on the second half of the AT portion after Gatlin, and we just kept going. We got a couple minutes ahead of the Karen, Kelsey, and Brandon. So we weren't far away, but it was enough. That part is so rocky that I couldn't keep looking back. I couldn't keep checking that we were all together, but I knew they were real close because when I could check, I'd see them and they'd catch up and then fall back a little bit. But we were very, very close to each other. So Sam and I just kept going. And when we got to the Weaverton switchbacks, there was actually a whole line of people, and we were almost had to come to a stop because they were bringing somebody down on a stretcher, and it had backed up the whole line, 50 people probably. But then apparently they got to a space where they could move over and let those of us who were backed up, they could let us by. So they just kind of let us go by this whole line of people. But it wasn't too much of a holdup, really, when I look at my split for the Weaverton switchbacks. Normally, I do something like a 16-minute mile there, I believe, if I remember correctly from my last 2 years. But this year, it was not that much slower. So it didn't hold us up that much. Unfortunately, when we got past them, like one more switchback later, I did see a person go down, probably broke their ankle. It was real painful, and really it's painful to watch because he was just a couple people ahead of me. He went down, and the agony in his voice was not only pain. It was just disaster. It was him mourning. He knew as soon as he went down, he knew he wasn't going to finish the race. He wasn't getting back up. But just the agony in his voice was really heartbreaking, gave me chills even. So, well, I said to Sam and I were together at that point. We were committed to finishing that part together. And I said, okay, we just have to survive the AT. I've said it before during this run. I'm going to say it again. Watch every step. Making up a couple minutes from here on out is not worth going down. Not that that guy did anything wrong, That's not what I'm saying. But oh my gosh, we just have to be careful because the pain, we don't want to experience the pain that we saw him go through that day too. But when we came off, we got down there, we could hear the crowds from a little ways away. We get down there, we knew we were safe when our feet hit the pavement. But Sam and I talked a couple times going down the last little set of kind of stair step rocks that they have there before you get there. I said, do not look up and smile or get too excited until your feet hit the road, because the last thing you want to do is fall on those last few steps right in front of all those people and the cameras and everything. So, but we really felt good. It made having the partnership the whole way between the twins and Brandon and then Sam with me, it made it go quicker. It took my mind off of it, even though my pace, my plan had been to hold back a little bit, to run relaxed, not dog it, not take it easy, but just be relaxed over the AT. And I ended up running directly in the middle of my last two T splits. I had run 5 minutes slower than last year's, but 5 minutes faster than the year before. So I hit directly in the middle of that. I don't think I could have planned that better if I tried, to be honest with you. But the company made it also somewhat enjoyable, and it took my mind off of the terrain, I think, a little bit. I mean, I could still concentrate on what I was doing and where my steps were, but normally I would get about 2 hours into a trail run and be like, nope, I am ready to be off of this trail and hit the road. But I didn't really have that feeling this time, and I think that was just because of the partnership. How about you, Chris?
I could not have had a more different experience than what you had, Katie. When I got on the AT, after that initial push, like when everybody's coming off the road and we're all together and you go up the fire road or whatever and you get some separation at the top of Lamb's Knoll and you start down the AT, the long section, I basically got into a window where there was no one around me for almost the entire stretch of the AT. So I was running by myself. Every 10 or 15 minutes, a group of faster runners might come up behind me, or I might pass somebody who was walking on one of the hills. But I ran almost that whole section by myself, and it was lonely. I also found that with the fog and the heavy cloud cover, it was a lot darker on the AT than I'm used to running. And so I think I was probably running a little more cautious because I wasn't necessarily sure where all the rocks and roots were. I wasn't picking them out as I was looking for my line as well as I would have liked. But I managed to get through without any disasters. I also was a little bit nervous because I know that my trail shoes have issues on wet rocks, and so with the rain overnight and the heavy fog, some of the rocks were a little slippery, so I was being a little extra cautious there too. Other than that, the only real event I had was as we were coming down into Gathland. As you head down that real steep part where it's almost stair steps of rocks, we came up on a group of probably Boy Scouts who were hiking on the AT. There must have been 30 of them. And they did a great job of trying to stay out of the way, but they're also very young teenage boys. So you had to be extra careful of, all of a sudden a pole might be stuck out and right at your feet as you're trying to make a plant on a rock or something like that. But got through that, came down into Gathland, and it was nice to have that opening there to get on through and get onto the second part of the AT. But all in all, I knew I was losing time on the AT this year, and when I got down to Weaverton, I was pretty frustrated with myself because I had, planned to go about 5 minutes faster than last year, and I was a solid 5 minutes behind. So I was a little frustrated coming off the AT, but excited to finally be down to the canal. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, I think I had a very similar experience to Chris. So, going up, I guess, Lamb's Knoll, I ran with Samir for a little bit, and then he actually got in front of me going up there. I think the fog played with my mind a little bit. I was used to I guess being able to see the entire hills as they were coming up. And I think I ran more of the hills than I normally would have. And then, like, I guess when I realized I was halfway up, I could kind of feel it. Then I kind of stopped and walked. But I think I ran a little bit more of those hills than I was used to. And I don't know if that kind of played into the way I performed on the AT or not, or, what it was. But I was with Samir for a while. And then when we hit that section by the old nuclear, or the old bomb shelter, whatever that place is, I gave Samir a fist bump and I told him to go get it, and he took off. I didn't see him again for a while, but I ran with Brett Mason for a little bit from Pittsburgh. I know him from the Pittsburgh Marathon and running JFK a little bit. A couple times I ran with him. So I kind of hung with him on the AT for a while, and, kind of got into a little relaxed zone. And looking back, it might have been a little too relaxed for what I like to do. But I think I also like had it in my head that the trail was wet, and I let some of that play into, like, the rocks were a little slippery and I didn't want to take chances because I didn't want to end up with a broken ankle, or I didn't want to ruin the day twisting an ankle or falling or whatever it might be. So I think I played it a little safer this year than I normally would have. And part of that was because of the rocks. And I think I just got stuck behind a couple people and just got comfortable where I was. What were you gonna say, Katie?
I was just gonna say, I think it's a little different where I was running than where you were running, because when we were running there were several parts that you could, like, we could just see the natural path that the majority of the people had taken. The leaves were packed down. It was just really easy to see a good path to put your feet. And I thought that was due to the rain that we had the day before. That it was wet out there a little bit. The rocks were slippery, but I felt like the path to run was very visual during a lot of the AT portion when I got there. But I'm sure it was not as like packed down and obvious whenever you guys were there. So you were probably finding your own way a little bit more. I did notice that whenever you're getting in the later part of the AT section where does have all those jagged rocks sticking up, that was very leaf covered still, and it was not packed down. You could tell there was not an obvious path when you got to that point, but I did think that that kinda helped me being not in the back of the pack by any means, but, more towards the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I know, like at Fire on the Mountain, when we go there and you're the first person on the trail, and you can see on the way out, there's nothing. But then when you come back and there's been 200 people on the trail, it does make a defined path in the leaves. So I think that does make a pretty big difference, like you said. And I know when I went down Weaverton, it felt like every rock was slippery. And I was just being extra cautious. I also heard the train coming as I was coming down Weaverton, so I don't know if, like, I slowed down purposely because of that, or what. But I definitely took my time down Weaverton. And then I'll jump into this section of the AT to towpath transition, I guess, while I'm speaking. So I got off of Weaverton, and my crew, Luke and Taylor, were there for me, and they had change of shoes for me and a new singlet. And then they had a new hat for me, gels, tailwind. So they had everything for me that I needed. And once I got down there, I know I looked at a couple of my pictures and I just had the biggest smile on my face because I was done with the AT and I could finally run again. And I made it to my favorite section on the course, the towpath, and I was about 6 to 8 minutes probably slower than what I wanted to be, but I was healthy and I was able to go run and see what I could do. So, Katie, do you want to start the next section? I guess talk about your crew like I just did, and then you can go ahead and go about your marathon towpath, and then I'll jump back to my marathon as well.
I actually used a different tailor. I used Kara's boyfriend, Taylor. It actually worked out very well that Kara and Kelsey and I were had trained together and were running such similar times, had planned to stay over the AT together. So I had asked if Taylor could just have my bag with my shoe change, and I actually did a vest change too. That way I wouldn't have to unpack anything from a vest or repack it with fuel or whatever I needed at that Weaverton station. So I just switched out my vest, I switched out my shoes. As I was tying my second shoe, Kara and Kelsey came running in just a couple minutes behind me. So I was putting on my vest. They started to change their shoes, and I said, I'm going to go ahead and go. I'm sure I'll see you out there because I just figured at some point they were going to catch up to me on the towpath. So as I ran the towpath, I felt good. I felt like I could just run forever, especially at the beginning. But what I did was I purposely held back a little bit to what my legs felt like they could do because it's a marathon along the towpath, right? So I can't just go out there and bomb the first few miles and think I'm going to run 26 of them that same way. So I actually used some of the tools that we talked about in the previous JFK episode. This is probably the first time I've approached the towpath this way, but I really did break it down into sections where as soon as I hit the towpath, my next section or the next checkpoint in my mind was the steeplechasers aid station at mile 19. When I got to the steeplechasers aid station, one of our steeplechaser friends, Johanna, was on the mic, and when she saw it was me coming, she just starts screaming, "It's Katie! It's Katie! Katie's here, one of our own!" and was just going nuts. And then Mariah and Jake were there, and Billy and Risa, and they were like, "What can we get you?" And Barbara was there. There was all kinds of steeplechasers there that I knew, and they just made me feel like a celebrity, and I got what I needed. I got Adam and I a cookie to put in my pack, one of the famous cookies, and I put it in my bag, and I went off. And it was so much to the point, even other people that I didn't know were like, "Oh, are you Katie?" And then somebody that I am familiar with was like, "You must feel like a celebrity." I'm like, "Yeah, that really will put another pep in your step." But anyway, then from there, after steeplechasers, I knew there were French fries at the next aid station, which I've mentioned were my favorite aid station food. So I broke that into the next checkpoint, then Antietam. From Antietam, the Bros and Bras unofficial aid station was the next place that I borrowed somebody else's crew. Sarah had a bag for me with my extra fuel and even a change of shoes if I wasn't feeling the ones that I had on. I didn't end up changing, but that was mile 30. And from 30, my next point was Taylor's Landing, which is 38. And that's a big stretch there at 30 miles to 38. And that was probably my hardest point along the way, my hardest stretch. I should have found something else, maybe the 34th aid station, but that just wasn't in my mind when I went there. So I got to 38 and I was just telling myself I had run every step of that towpath except for when I stopped at aid stations. I'd walk for a little bit while I grabbed something, and then I would just keep moving the whole time. So I was like, okay, just get to Taylor's. Just get to Taylor's Landing without walking in between the aid stations. And I did that. Then I did take a little extended. I say I walked during the aid station, but I definitely walked the aid station and then the support crew area. But then I ran again to the whole end of the towpath and got to Dam 4 with only having walked along the aid stations, which I thought was really a huge accomplishment for me and not something prior to that day that I thought I could do. It was really a testament though to breaking up the race into those smaller portions because my mind wouldn't have been able to handle you have 12 miles to go, you have 20 miles to go on the towpath, but it could handle 4. 8 was a stretch, but it still could handle 8. It could handle 4 more. And so that's exactly what I had planned to do. and it really, really helped. As far as fueling goes along the towpath, though, I found myself not really able to eat like I had in years past. The real food, every time I got to an aid station, I'd look at what was available, and normally I'd just have a buffet, and I couldn't do it that day. I don't know what it was, but that just goes to show that some days you want the real food, some days you can take the gels, some days a mix works, but it's hard to tell sometimes prior to, no matter how you've prepared. But I think that's it for my towpath section.
So,
Adam?
what was your marathon split? I mean, I know the towpath is technically 26.3, but when we refer to that segment, we call it a marathon split. So, what was your marathon split?
I actually ran a 4 hour and 33-minute marathon split on the towpath, which, just to give that some reference, 2 years ago when I ran my 10 hour and 10-minute JFK, I had run a 4 hour, 55-minute marathon. And last year, I ran 5:11 on the towpath.
What did you run 4 weeks ago at Marine Corps?
3:57.
3:57. So, and this
Hey, listen,
4:33 is after doing 15 and a half on the Appalachian Trail. That's impressive.
and having 8 more to go. Well, thank you very much. And when I told Maria Spindler after the race that I had run a 4:33 along the towpath and that my PR was only a 3:57, she said I've been slacking on the marathon.
Hey, and well, just to not get in an argument, I agree with her. But so, but the last thing I want to say about your towpath marathon is that it is interesting because I remember just last week how you talked about how you were gonna not use gels because you could eat all the real food on the towpath. So it's interesting though that you ran better and faster, even though you didn't really have like you didn't stick to your plan coming in. You had to adjust on the fly because you're right. Sometimes that food just doesn't look good, right? And you have to go to plan B. Or sometimes you're a gel person and the gel doesn't taste good, and now you got to eat a bucket of French fries. So it's pretty cool that you were able to adjust on the fly.
Well, it's lucky that I had planned to still be taking in gels along with the real food, because if I hadn't had the gels with me, then I mean, they do have gels offered on the course, but I have never tried those. And I'm not wanting to try a gel that might mess with my GI system
They were
on race day.
they were Hammer nutrition gels, and I did take two of them, and they worked very good. So shout out to Hammer. They were very good, useful along the course. I know I took one at mile 34 and 38. So I'll save that for just a minute. Okay. Katie, are
Yeah.
you?
Well,
Yeah.
I absolutely have nothing against hammer gels, but could have been any other gel. I have been strictly Huma now during 2025 since March. I use the Huma gels and they do not leave me with any GI distress. So I did not want to mess with what I know works in that department, especially. The porta potties are too few and far between to do too much experimentation on race day.
Definitely understandable. All right, Chris, run us through your towpath marathon experience.
Yeah, so it started with just an absolute NASCAR pit stop for me at Weaverton. I had my wife Megan, daughter Sarah, and her boyfriend Shane, and they all worked it out. They had their assigned roles. I sat down on the bucket. Sarah started untying my shoes. Megan had the clean shoes ready to go. Shane was handing me gels. As soon as my shoes were off, Sarah was breaking open the pickle juice for me, and I slammed down a shot of that, and I was in and out. Like it was perfect. Like I couldn't have been more happy with how well they just embraced it and, took on their roles and got me in and out of the aid station so quickly. But that said, like, the last thing I said to him is, "I'm really far behind, I gotta go." And, when I got onto the AT, or I'm sorry, onto the towpath, my my thought was, "I can't make it all up now," and my day, being 4 minutes behind last year and 10 minutes behind where I wanted to be might be over. Like, I might not be able to break my time from last year. But I was pretty proud of myself. I didn't give up at that point, even though I thought about it. I ran that first mile, and I was using the RaceJoy app, and I don't know if you all were using it, but one of the things that's nice is as you go through each mile mark, it updates your average pace and updates your estimated finish time. And when I went through the first mile on the towpath, I noticed my finish time dropped. And then the second time, the finish time dropped. And I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to feel a little better, and maybe this day isn't as bad as I thought. And within 4 or 5 miles, I had it to where I'm like, okay, now I'm looking like I might be able to actually beat last year's time.
Could
Did you have
could
something
you
to Adam?
could you imagine like the opposite effect if the numbers were going like the other direction? Like I would definitely have to turn that Race Joy app off if that were the case.
Absolutely, the volume
That
would have to go all the way off, or it would destroy you, right? Go ahead,
Yeah.
Katie.
Oh yeah.
well, that's what I was gonna say is that I had Race Joy running because I knew Kara's crew, Taylor, they were gonna be following me too, but I had the volume turned all the way down so that I couldn't hear it because I have had things like that affect my mind in the past, and it it can really mess with you if it's going the opposite direction, and it can make you kind of feel like I'm doing all this hard work and it's slipping away. Because last year I would have felt that way whenever I had goals to break 10 and I had a really rough day and it was slipping away. I ended in 10:15, so it wasn't too bad, but I would have heard that time just go further and further and further, and then if that gets in my head, it makes it's gonna make me sad or emotional or just devastated, and then I could easily slip from 10:15 to 10:30 before I knew it because I'd thought, like, I'd lost, So it's great when it's going the right way, right? But I didn't wanna take any chances, so I turned off my volume so I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. It just gave me a complete mental mind reset that I knew what my average pace was coming off the AT. And as long as each mile on the canal was below that average pace, my estimated finish time was going to keep dropping. And I managed to do that almost the entire canal, 26 miles. When I got to Dam 4, I had made up all the time I had lost on the AT and was actually 4 minutes ahead of last year. So I ended up running a 4:04 for the Canal Marathon, and last year was a 4:12. So I was 8 minutes faster this year on the towpath. So I was really happy with that. It made it a lot easier to turn the corner and head up the hill on the road. But other than that, my canal was pretty uneventful. I, much like Katie, only walked as I went through the aid stations, which was a very different experience from what I experienced last year. Like I think Adam has said in the past, that stretch out near Taylor's Landing, it just seems to go on forever. The low point for me was, or the hardest part was definitely getting from Snyder's Landing to Taylor's Landing. And just the fact that they put that aid station at Taylor's Landing as absolute far away as they can at that
Yes,
opening is just
yes.
cruel, because you get to that opening and you think, okay, I'm there, but you still have almost, I don't know, it seems like a half a mile from the time it opens up till you actually get to the aid station. So, but other than that, I had a great canal. It reset my energy and it gave me hope for heading into the road. How about you,
Very
Adam?
Did you have Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry. Chris, did you have any mental strategies that you used? Like, did you have an earworm song or anything?
So I had a couple that I had, pre-planted and I was ready to use,
Mhm.
but I didn't use them this year. I literally the race joy saved my saved my race. Just I focused on every mile one at a time, just trying to beat that average, and even when there were a few miles on the canal where I was either at or a little bit above, but it didn't change my finish time by that much at that point. So
Right.
I just stuck with it, bounced right back. Okay, the next mile I'm going to try to do a little bit quicker and still bring that down a little bit. And that was my strategy and what got me through.
Did you have the
Awesome.
chance to see your crew at all?
I did. I saw Megan and the crew right around Dargan's and then again at Shepherdstown. And again, they had the gels, they had the pickle juice. I took them from them and didn't have to break into my supplies on my vest, and that was enough. But after Shepherdstown, I said, just go ahead, get yourself to Williamsport and make sure you're there for the finish because I don't want you to miss it this year.
Was there, last question for you, was there ever a thought of going up the bridge this year? I remember in the last podcast you said that was your I'm going back to bed moment. So did you have that this year, or what was your thoughts as you were going past the bridge?
I definitely did not. By that point, I was in a pretty good place at Shepherdstown this year, and I actually laughed to myself because as I went past it, and you get up towards the campground there, I was like, "Huh, I didn't even think about that this year." So I was pretty happy. Just took in the sights and the sounds along the river, and again, I was running by myself most of the way. Saw a few more people on the towpath, but it was it was a very lonely race for me this year, I would say, compared to last year. I didn't really strike up any conversations with anybody and didn't have, that opportunity to really meet anyone because when folks were passing me, they were passing me. And if I was passing people, it was usually someone who was struggling at the moment and needed some time. So how about you, Adam?
Yeah, I had like a very different experience than both of you, I think. I came off the AT, like I said, and I was kind of, like Chris, I was behind where I wanted to be. I was behind where I was last year. I was already in a pretty big deficit. I felt great in my new shoes, the endorphin elites, and I was ready to run. And the goal was to do 7 minutes and 10 seconds per mile and just kind of go out there and do that as long as I could, as long as it felt good. I've clicked off the first one right around I think 7:09, and I just said, well, let's hold it. My claim to fame is loving the towpath, so I kind of figured I better stick true to that and hold tight as long as I could. But in the first uh, well, the first five JFKs, minus the one that Katie and Robert ran with me the entire way, I've kind of run the towpath by myself. And I'd get on the towpath and just kind of pick people off one by one and try to pass a group of people if they're ahead of me and just work my way back up. I probably got off of the AT and I was probably in about 80th or 90th place. I would estimate. I could go back and check. So I knew I had to work my way up. Right about a half a mile onto the towpath, this guy comes up next to me and he asks what my goal is for the race. And I tell him, I really wanted to be sub 6:30, but right now it's looking like 6:40. Get a little bit, ask me again if I get off the towpath and I might be happy to break 7. And he asked me if I ran the race before, and I told him this is my 6-1. And he goes, well, I'm going to run with you if that's okay. So Andrea and I ran from mile like 16 all the way to mile 48.5 together. So we ran the entire canal plus 6.5 miles of the road together. So we'll talk about the road part later, but so it was completely different. We just clicked off 710. Sometimes we were having full conversations. I know he's from London. He lives in Florida now. His mom lives in New York. He ran the New York Marathon in 2:31. We just kind of switched stories back and forth as we were, just clicking off the miles. My watch would beep and he would ask me, what was that? And I'd go 7:13, and he'd say, all right, let's pick it back up. So we'd go back and we'd run a 7:06, and just kind of mix it up. But it was great to have somebody to run with, and somebody who was very like-minded. We would see somebody 200 yards up, and he'd go, that's the next guy we got to go get. And then we'd work towards him. And that's what I would always do in my head. So if he went through a rough patch, I would kind of drag him along. If I was going through a rough patch, he would drag me along.
I know you guys are running at really fast pace for what, like, I consider running this at. How do you talk at the same time?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we're talking like 7:10. You got to think, like, if I'm running a marathon, like when we did Marine Corps, I was doing 6:45s. So 7:10s is a big difference than 6:45s. So it's, there's
But
it's
you can comfortably talk and not detract from your race. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, I did feel that way. And then, like we would have a conversation, and then we would run 3 miles in complete silence. But it was just that companionship right there. And we would even like
Yeah.
break up the silence laughing and going, man, we must be hurting, or like that was a quiet mile or whatever. And we would just kind of laugh at each other. But it was so great to have him there, and, just completely unexpected. And, immediately, like, he made it clear that he wanted to run with me as long as he could. And we kind of made a gentleman's agreement that, like, hey, if he wanted to go, no hard feelings. If I needed to go, no hard feelings. But, we agreed to work together as long as possible. And there were points, like Chris said, he was by himself for a while, that, like, if I didn't have him next to me, I would have been alone, which I'm used to. But I definitely would have walked a couple times if I knew no one was watching, which is it's pretty funny for me to say, but hey, I'm not above it, right? Like, if nobody's looking at me, like, I could take 10 steps here, and just kind of reset a little bit. But like, this guy's holding me accountable, and I can't walk now because he's right here and he needs me and I need him. So but it was cool. Like, I'd say, hey, aid station coming up around the corner, and I'm going to stop and get Gatorade. And he'd be like, all right, I got you. And like, we would work together. We even, about mile 29-ish, he was like, hey, I got to pee. Like, how's that going to affect what we're doing? And I said, cool, I got to pee too. So we both stopped and turned to opposite sides of the towpath and took a pee break. And then we jumped right back into the run. And it was great. So like, everything was working out pretty good. So yeah, I was extremely
Well, there.
good.
No, I was just going to say there is such thing as a positive distraction and a negative distraction. So it sounds like those what you guys were doing was positive distractions for each other.
Yes, definitely. And like, I had a very similar experience to what Katie had. Since we are so local to this area, like, everybody knew me at the aid stations. So people were screaming for me. They were yelling my name. We would pass random people on the towpath, and they'd be like, is that Adam? And they'd be like, go, man, go. They're cheering for me. We saw Amber running. She was running back to the Bros and Bras tent, and she was cheering for me. And I know at one point, Andrea turned at me and he goes, you have to be famous. He's like, there's no other explanation. Like, I don't understand how everyone knows you. And I was like, well, this is where I run all the time. And at one point he goes, I'm just going to pretend my name's Adam, so I know all these people are cheering for me. So it was like the greatest experience to have him with me that entire time. And then the last part about the towpath that I really, really enjoyed, and I know the live stream caught this, was I saw my physical therapist, John, from EPI, out there at Taylor's, and no, I'm sorry, Snyder's. And he said something to me, and I walked over to him when I was getting the Gatorade and gave him a fist bump, and then gave him a big sweaty hug. And it was right there on the live stream. And I love that moment between us, because there's so much history there that we have. And just like, he respects what I do so much. And I know he's helped me get back to where I am now. So it was just a special moment to see him out there. And that was my crew the last 2 years. He didn't crew me this year, but I think he's going to make a comeback next year, because I'm sure Luke's going to be back on the course. So I'll probably need John again as my crew. So it was really special to have him out there. And he yelled at me to I told him it was a really tough day for me so far, and he said, "Well, don't stop until you can see the finish line." And then he goes, "Well, wait, never mind. Don't stop till you cross the finish line." So that made me laugh and gave me a little bit of a inspiration as I was going forward from 34 on. All right, so we are now off of the towpath, and let's talk about the road experience. So, Katie, do you want to talk about your experience on the road?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that getting to Dam 4 and the transition onto the road, if you don't get there by 3 p.m., you get the vest, the reflective vest, because you're going to be on the road where there's still cars. And a lot of people have the goal of just beating the vest, beat the time that you have to take the vest. No shame in it, but it is kind of a nice little earmark for those of us who are like thinking about flirting with the 10-hour total time. So I'm happy to say that as I got closer and closer to the end of the towpath, I pretty much knew I was not going to get a vest. I was almost half an hour before the vest cutoff time. So for the first time, I did not have to take a vest. And that was a good sign to me that I was likely going to hit my goal for the day. But I was so motivated to get to the road because I had talked myself into running all of the canal. Little by little, just don't run till you get to Taylor's. Or I'm sorry, just don't walk till you get to Taylor's. Just don't walk till you get to the end because you're only 4 miles away, right? So when I got to the road, I almost felt a relief because I thought there's going to be hills here and I can walk them with no shame. There's no shame in walking during the JFK 50, but I didn't have to fool myself into thinking that I didn't have to like walk, that I could still run these because the very first thing we do is hit that very steep hill. And I just walked up that. I got to the top where it flattens out. I would say the road was just kind of like I just cruised the whole way. I didn't run the whole thing. I walked on some of the steeper hills. But what's really kind of crazy about the road is as you're coming up on some of these flat spots or even downhills, you'll see in the distance where there's going to be another hill. But when you get to that hill, sometimes it's not really that steep or it's not that hard. And you have been on flat for so long, the uphill actually kind of feels good on the legs. The downhill's a little easier just because of gravity, but I found myself just pushing up some of those hills as far as I could. And like I said, there's a couple that are a little longer or a little steeper that I would walk for a little bit of them, but I typically would try to find something that stuck out that I could run to that point and then walk a little bit further and then get to the top and start running again. So I just cruised, and I will say I do have a favorite spot once on the road. There's the Oasis, which is the aid station at mile 44, which is the high school that I work at. And last year, I didn't think there were a lot of students there when I came through last year, but this year there were so many, and they were there's a big bend in the road, and there were a bunch lined up at that bend. And I just came through, and they were cheering for me because I had several of them. I actually have them currently in class, and I just pointed at them. I was kind of showboating a little bit. But then I got to the actual tables at the aid station, and there were more former students there offering me stuff, people that I coached at the high school with whenever I first started working there. Coworkers of mine were there. Another student jumped in a picture with me. It was really nice. And then one of my former co-coaches was on a bike. And so he probably rode for about maybe only 100 meters, 200 meters with me, but just kind of chit-chatting. And as I was ending that, he was saying, "Well, I'm going to let you go now, but just remember, no pressure, just don't mess up." And that's what he used to tell all our students with all the love in the world. No pressure, just don't mess up. And I had forgotten that. And it was just such a nice little moment. It made me laugh. And then, from there, there's only about a 10K left. So watching those miles count down for us as we got closer and closer, I would say I was running a pretty decent pace between 10 and 11 minutes, I think, for the most part. But when we got about 2 miles away, there was a brand new Sheetz, and it's like an uphill to where you're coming into town, and I'm very familiar with this because this is where I work. I drive there every day, and it's really like, I don't know, a very important part of the race for me because when I drive by there anytime, I think about this race almost every time. But do you know what? I'm gonna save the rest of it for the home stretch discussion. But I would say the road was just it's my favorite part because it's getting close, because the miles are counting down. You're under 10, so you're in the single digits at my high school aid station. It's just a really nice way to get to the finish line. So how about you, Chris?
Yeah, for me, the road was a welcome relief from coming off of the towpath, right? Because even though I'd had a great section, right, 26 plus miles of left, right, no change in elevation is just that's a lot for
Yeah.
me. And so I had been looking forward to the chicken soup for quite a while. And so I was very happy that when I got around the corner there, the gentleman was there and he was more than happy to give me my cup of soup. And I just sipped on that as I walked up that real steep hill and then got into a little bit of a groove and just tried to survive the road for me. And I mean that mentally, right? It was definitely in my head. I was tired, my quads were shot at that point. So all the downhills hurt. The hills, like you said, Katie, were a good opportunity to walk for a few steps. But I had the exact same experience. You would see that hill up ahead, and you would think, okay, I'm going to run to that mark in the road or that telephone pole, and then I'll walk to the top of the hill. But it wasn't that steep when you actually got there, and I could run a little bit further. And so I definitely think that helped. Finally, with maybe 3 miles to go, that was when I finally said, "Okay, it's time." I felt good that I was gonna make the time. I wasn't gonna blow up in those last 3 miles, and I'm like, "It's gonna hurt, but just run. Just run it out, and let's see what you can do." And I think my last 2 miles were probably 2 of the 5 or 6 fastest for the whole day. So, I was really happy with that, and I think just like you said, Katie, the that Sheets was a welcome sign when you got there 'cause once you knew you got to the top of the hill and rounded that corner, you were in the home stretch. So, how about you, Adam?
Yeah, I had a very similar experience like with the road. I mean, I know we've done it multiple times now, JFK, but I forgot to mention my marathon split. We were able to hold 7:10s for about 22, 23 miles, and then started to slow down a little bit. So we averaged 7:14, and Andre and I ran a 3:10:08 marathon. So after finishing the towpath and looking down at the clock, seeing that split with my Weaverton split, I knew I couldn't win the race anymore. I knew Hans was done, so I knew I couldn't win overall first place, but I still had to get everything that I could. I'm just kind of joking there, but so going up that first hill, I told Andrea that, hey, I normally walk this hill, so I'm gonna do that again, and then after that, like the goal is to not walk again. So we power walked up that hill, and then from there we were just moving forward, like you guys said. It's kind of nice. It's an 8 mile road, and you just know one foot in front of the other, and you just have to go. The best thing JFK does is they put mile marker signs that count down. And I know we've talked about that on the last podcast, but seeing mile 42 and then 43, 44 would be a lot different than what we get to see, where we see 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, and that just mentally is huge. So whoever's idea that was, thumbs up to them, because that's pretty big when you get to see those signs coming down. And I got to see, like Katie said, the aid station groups there. They most of them know me as well. I saw the Williamsport people, and then I got to see the Greencastle Flyers at mile 46. And Rich always takes a video of me when I come by, so he was real excited to see me and had a video of me getting some Gatorade and stuff. And then he encourages with 4 to go. And then once you get to the 5K mark, like Chris said, 3 miles to go is up a pretty big hill. That's like the last major climb, minus the new Sheets Hill. But once you get up that 3 mile mark, you are good to go. So, I was still with my new friend Andrea. We ran that whole road part together, and all the way until right before that Sheets part. And I'll just go ahead and continue, and then we'll jump back over to Katie. So, but I know right before we hit that last aid station, he kind of hinted that he was having some chafing issues, and told me to go ahead, and I politely tried to decline and told him I'd stick it out with him, and he told me, hey, you can keep going, you do what you need to do, and I'll see you at the finish. So I continued. I probably picked it up just a little bit, and then I had a little glance behind me. We're like probably about mile 48 and a half right now. I glanced behind me and I saw him, and then I continued and I ran, and after about 200 meters, I got a little worried that maybe I had imagined this guy the entire race. And I was like, if I get to the finish line and I turn around and he's not coming, I'm going to be worried that I hallucinated for the last 4 hours. And I was like, I might never run again if that is the case. Because, I mean, we were together side by side the entire from towpath to the Sheets. Go ahead, Katie.
And what was his number?
Yeah, I
Bib
was going to
number.
get to that. So when I did get to the finish line, I turned around. There was a lady that, actually, the fifth place female, and I don't remember her name. I'm sorry, but the fifth place female had got in between us. So I saw her, and then that kind of made me even more worried that he wasn't real, because I didn't see him for a while. He was about a minute and a half, 2 minutes behind me at the end. But then finally, I could see him come into view. And then as he gets closer and closer, if you remember from last week or maybe some of the pictures, I was bib 50, and I had never asked him his bib number or never looked down at his bib the entire time. And when he crossed the finish line, I noticed for the first time that he was bib number 49. So now in our race photos, bib 49 and 50 were running together for about 34 and a half miles. So it just made the story even cooler that, 49 and 50 were kind of just hanging out, going for a jog, and, for 6 hours, and just, together. So it was really cool experience.
So the fifth place female was Jeannie Mack.
Thank
That
you,
finished right
Chris.
next to you. Okay.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate that. And I know we're going to talk about our what we consider to be the home stretch of JFK now. So I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit. My idea of the home stretch is when you turn at the water tower and then you can see Murray. So that's kind of like where I feel, almost like I got to hold back tears, because I'm there and I did it and I'm going to finish no matter what. And I just try to finish as strong as I can. So for me, the home stretch is at Murray's. And when I crossed the finish line this year, it was special for me because my middle son Ryan and my my daughter Lacey was there, and my mom was there to cheer me on. And so this is the first time that they have seen me finish JFK 50. So that was kind of special for me to have them there and kind of celebrate a little bit with them. So, Katie, what's your home stretch of JFK? What do you consider that to be?
Well, typically, I do consider the home stretch to be that turn right past the brand new Sheets. When I come up that hill and then turn onto the road, it's like you kinda come back down the hill a little bit, cruise back down, but you're really coming into Williamsport. You can see the water tower, and where the interstate where people get off the interstate right there is where I get off the interstate to come to school every single day. So that to me is the home stretch. But I did want to backtrack just for a second and say while I was running on the road, coming up to that point, right at the 3 miles to go mile marker, coming up to that, I was like, I'm doing it. I'm hitting my goal. I think I'm going to hit it in a major way. I don't know if I can break. I'm not going to break 9:30, but maybe 9:40. And then I'm like, nah, probably not 9:40, but definitely 9:45. When I got to the 3rd mile marker, I get a text and I don't have my phone out. It's packed away, but I saw it on my watch and it was from Adam and it said something like, you're amazing. Keep going. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I knew he was going to be so proud of me, but when I got that text, it just kind of lit a little bit more of a fire. And when I had 2 miles left, that fire is still burning just a little bit because I know he's like tracking me on Life 360 and he knows where I am. And so when I start coming up that hill to where I consider to be the home stretch, I see our friends Mike and Megan just a little bit ahead of me. And I had been chasing them since Antietam aid station. I saw them at Antietam and they took off and I had seen them here and there throughout the rest of the race. So for 21 miles, here I am chasing these two and I can see them. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to go try to get up there and run with them. But they had started walking up that hill just for that really short, because it is a hill. Normally I'd be walking too, but I was so motivated. I hit this like second, third, 40th wind. I don't know which one it was, but I just started running and I ran hard. And when I turned that corner, I just kept going. I I kind of started thinking today, like, normally in like a half marathon, I wouldn't trust myself to start that kind of kick at 2 miles out. I normally talk myself, okay, at 1 mile you can go. And then when I get to that 1 mile left, I'm like, maybe half a mile because it might hurt. Like, right? So, but I guess it's all about perspective to where this was 50 miles on my watch. My watch was actually a mile long. So no, I'm not saying the course is, but my watch had it that way. So I'm thinking out of 50 miles, 2 miles is a good place. 2 miles left is a good place to kick. But it just never hit me. I didn't feel too tired. I felt like I just had the legs to do it and I just kept going. And just like Chris mentioned, the last 2 miles, I had only 1 mile that was equal to either one of those miles the whole race. So my last 2 miles were basically the fastest of my entire race. The very last mile was my fastest of the entire race. So I was just really motivated, really happy. I was coming down that home stretch, even that hill at Murray's. Adam mentioned the home stretch being when you can see Murray's. When you get to that corner, you have 0.3 left, I believe, of the race. But there's this little hill and it's steep. And when I go on training runs from my school and I have to run up that little hill, I'm cussing it then. And I've heard plenty of people cuss it at the end of JFK. It's just almost cruel. But it still is. As soon as you crest that hill, you can see the finish line. You see all the people that are down there. And it's just a beautiful sight and a really nice way to kind of cruise into the finish line. So what about you, Chris? What do you consider the home stretch?
For me, I'm a little bit closer to the end. It's probably when you crest the top of the hill and you can see the arch and it is there. That's at the point where the crowd takes over, right? The emotions just flowing in. All the people that you've been waiting all day to see are there and they're cheering for you. For me, I got a huge high five from my best buddy Adam as I approached the timing mat. And funny thing is, at work yesterday, somebody said to me, they're like, "I was watching the live stream. Who did you get that high five from?" And at first, I didn't even remember it, and I had to go back and watch it. And I'm like, "Oh, that was Adam," And so, you know, it just the brain fog of being at mile 50 or whatever. But you know, just such a great experience and crossing that line and getting your medal and then being able to go find your family and start celebrating. So that was it for me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In the last probably 100 meters or so, there were these 2 or 3 finishers running side by side. I think it was maybe 2 finishers. Then a couple kids came out in between them, and then a couple people that weren't in the race were, like, on either side of them right in front of me. And so I was like, "I can either slow down and come in behind them, but then I won't have any finish line photos of myself," or I was like, "I think I can I'm running pretty good right now. I think I can sprint around them." So I did that. I definitely kicked it down another notch and sprinted around him, and then at that point, one of the guys jokingly said, "Hey, you can't do that." He was just kidding, and I said, "I'm sorry, I just want my own finish line photos," and they laughed, and I it's funny that things you think about, like, while you're almost finishing a 50-mile race, right?
Hey, one thing I wanted to just touch on that you mentioned, Katie, when you said that you were chasing down Mike and Megan, I just wanted to give them a huge shout out this year. I'm gonna definitely undersell them, but I think they PR'd this year by over an hour. Like, just a
I think it was an hour
phenomenal
and a
day.
half.
Yeah, I knew I was gonna do it. Just a phenomenal day. They've been working so hard. They've been putting in so many miles on the trails, and, I couldn't have been more happy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had plenty of conversations with them since, and I can't get over how well they ran. I told Adam that last night while we were making dinner. I said, "Do you know who I'm more surprised and thrilled for than almost anybody? Mike and Megan. The amount of work they've done, how well they ran. I mean, I don't think they expected it. I expected them to do well. I just had no idea, like, how well it was gonna be. So I'm really, really proud of them and excited.
All right, so let's jump into the most memorable moment for you for the race. Chris, I'm going to let you take this one first. What are you going to take away from JFK?
So, my most memorable moment will probably be when I came off the towpath. One of the things that I had, kinda remembered from last year was that when I came off the towpath, you were already finished with the race. And so, as I was approaching, dam 4, I was looking at my watch and I'm like, "Well, Adam's probably done, so let's just go finish this." And it gave me a little bit of a chuckle and, helped reset me a little bit mentally, but in addition to that, the support I got from Megan and Sarah and Shane, that I could not have asked for a better crew. I I was just in awe at how smoothly everything went, and so I appreciated them being out there, and then of course all our other friends from the Tulo group, from Cloud Splitter Coffee, and from the Steeplechasers. They were just all over the course, and like you said, every time you went through, they were and the Bros and Bras group, don't wanna leave them out, they were just so supportive and, it really helps when you're no matter what point you're at in the race to get that little bit of energy lift from your friends, so how about you, Katie?
I have a couple things to mention, but I would absolutely echo all the friends that were out there, not only the people that I ran with, but the people that were in the crowd, the people who were at the aid stations, just like you said. I think this was a very, very different JFK for me because usually I kind of set out on my own and just go it alone the whole time. And this time I had friends that I ran with that I planned to, and then so many people, so many friends that I saw along the course that were in the race and I didn't plan to see them, but I shared some what I keep referring to as shared strides with them because maybe I didn't stay with them for very long, but I did get to say hi, you're doing great, how's it going kind of thing. I could I have a whole entire list here and it's probably 20 people deep, maybe more. It's it there's just so many and it that made it really special for me and I would be remiss if I did not mention that I trained with a group of people this year on the AT, on the canal. We called ourselves the FAFO group, FAFO crew, actually. And that just stemmed from us being out on the AT on a training run one day and saying, like, Well, if you never F around, you're never gonna find out. So maybe we just F around and do the best we can and put in this training and like put it all out there on race day and see what happens. If you never put yourself out there, you never really see what you can do. Now, maybe you'll blow up at the same time, so you got to do it smart, but let's see what happens. And so we kind of made that our little tagline the whole like from summer up until race day, and we even had little buttons made up, and so that was like kind of adds a fun aspect. We're kind of a team going in there unofficially, but the m- absolute though most memorable moment of the whole entire race has to be when I finished. I was on cloud 9. I had had a good race. I had run well under what my goal was. I had felt good. I mean, there was pain, right? There's always going to be pain during this, but I had managed it. I had really crushed my expectations, and I'm sure I crushed Adam's expectations too. So when I come in, he's videoing me. All you guys are there. Chris is there. Chris's family's there. Mario's there giving high fives. You know, eh, all these people. I'm just losing it because there's so many.
Mariah and
But
Grace and Mike and
oh,
yeah, yep.
Grace and Mike and Mariah. Yep. All of them were there waiting for me to finish. And oh yeah, Mariah got you on video. That's right. Being emotional. But anyway, but so I finish, I have this huge smile on my face. I probably smiled for about 75% of the race, really. I just was having such a good time and it was so enjoyable. I loved every second, even the painful parts. But when I finished, I was so happy. I knew I had just done something so big. It was just this magical experience again. And before I even like I got my medal, I was talking to the guy who gave the medal to me and I was just so happy. And I look up and here's Adam. He came around the opposite side, came into the finisher chute, and he gave me the biggest hug. He was in tears. He was so proud of me. And I was just like laughing because I was so happy. And it was just all joy and emotion. And I was like, I can't believe I did that. And then whenever he told me how much he loved me and all that, how proud of me he was. And that really is like my why. I want him to be proud. And that's probably why I got that kick at the end is because I knew I was accomplishing that goal and how excited he was going to be for me. But when he gave me that long hug, it was just so special. And thank God somebody got it on camera because I just never want to forget that feeling right then. But of course, when we broke the hug, I was like, I can retire now because it was like the final PR that I needed for the year. I'd PR'd every other race distance that I ran this year, and I needed this 50-mile just to cap it off so I could, come full circle here. And it all happened, and I was like, I can retire. And of course, I laughed because we all know that's not happening, but
There's still time for 100.
not this year. Definitely not. I don't think there's any on the calendar, race calendar to
There's
sign up
one
for.
December 6th that Randy's running. I'm sure I could get you into that.
Maybe we'll save that for, like, next year.
All right, so my most memorable moment was just the community at the race. So it was just an awesome experience. Just, I met someone at mile 15 and a half, mile 16, and then we shared 34 miles together and just kind of worked together the entire race. So that was pretty special. Seeing all of our friends and family at the aid stations, along the towpath, along the road, along the course was really, really special. And then just seeing you two do really, really well. We'll talk about our times and PRs in just a second. But then there were so many other people. You guys mentioned Mike and Megan. Donald and Alicia did really well. They came in right after Katie. And then Samir, who we've talked about on the podcast, and Ryan Bowman, who I've coached. Samir was the first Washington County male to finish in 7 hours and 10 minutes. And Ryan Bowman was the second Washington County male to finish, and he was in 7:14. When I saw his mom at the finish line, she came over and talked to me, and I said, okay, cool. Like, where's Ryan? Is he on the road? What mile marker is he at? And she goes, oh, he finished like 10 minutes ago. And I was like, oh man, like holy crap. Like I didn't know, I didn't know he was done. I missed him coming out and he ran way faster than we had talked about. So I was shocked with that in a happy way. So first and second place males in Washington County. And then Tony, our good buddy, ran a great PR. Who else am I missing that we know that ran uh, races? Go ahead, Katie.
I did want to mention because I missed it before, but I've talked so much about Kara and Kelsey, and I like how we plan to run together. We started on the AT together. We really worked that. We've done more than just the AT runs together too. Like some of my speed work I go and do at the same time as them. So with that said, we had talked about how cool it would be if we could all finish together. We didn't do that, but the three of us did finish within 3 minutes of each other. So I finished 2 minutes behind Kelsey, and Kara finished 1 minute behind me. So we were all within 3 minutes in a 50-mile race. That was pretty cool. And also, as another side note, Adam had them sign his bib because of how much they had helped us this year, or helped me this year, I guess. And so that was like really kind of a special moment. And then to it finished so closely together, it was really cool for us.
So I guess I'll go ahead, Chris. I'll jump into that story in just a second.
Yeah. I've got one more I want to give a shout out to, and that would be my good friend Heidi Paulus. She ran an 11:39 for her first JFK, and I know she was just thinking like all she wanted to do was beat the 13-hour cutoff. So huge shout out to her for all the hard work she put in. But sorry, back to you,
Yeah,
Adam.
That's
no,
awesome.
you did. That's good. Yeah, and then I know Ethan and his girlfriend Courtney ran. It was Courtney's first JFK. Our good friends Becca and Robert, they ran, and we'll talk more about them in just a few minutes here. But so yeah, we knew, and I know I'm
Jenny and
definitely,
Matt.
yeah, Jenny and Matt, and I know I'm probably forgetting a few more, but the community aspect, and it seems like everybody we know is either running JFK or they're crewing for JFK or they are, just come out to the finish line. So, that is super special to have all of that community
Can I
involvement.
mention
Yep.
just a couple other people? Larry Wilson ran his first. Alex Huffer was out there battling some foot pain. Adrian Wren ran her first. Proclaimed she would never run again, but I've heard that maybe there's a maybe out there. Shirtless Luke Diamond that we met at Fire on the Mountain. Casey, Brandon, Racine, I mentioned him earlier. Sam, Jess. There's just a lot of people that we know that I didn't want to end without mentioning because those are all people that I definitely shared some strides with.
And of course, we can't forget Bradley, who is also part of your FAFO group, and what a huge accomplishment he had this year after his struggles last year.
Oh, absolutely. And do you know what's funny? The other day I was like, yesterday, my high school posted about people who had been either current Wildcats at my high school or former. And I almost didn't even list Bradley because he doesn't seem like that was a former student of mine. Yes, I taught Bradley whenever he was in high school. And it doesn't seem like that because now he's just our running friend. He's our buddy. I almost don't see him that way anymore. So I think that's a good thing that, he was just a kid years and years ago that I taught in, I don't even know what class, but now he's our running buddy and he's, yeah, definitely an integral part. I would call him a founding member of the FAFO crew.
All right. So let's go through this quick. So Chris, finish time, finish place, and are you happy with it? And okay, good. That's good.
I finished in 8 hours, 9 minutes, and 13 seconds, which was 5 minutes and 47 seconds faster than last year. So, yeah, ecstatic with that finish, especially with, like I mentioned, how slow I came off the AT compared to where I wanted to be. Was super happy. Ended up the 108th overall male in the race and fourth in my age group. So, could not be more pleased with that. And looking forward to coming back next year.
All right, Katie, what about you?
I have to also mention Jay Fowler, Julie,
Oh yeah, you keep remembering people.
Jeffrey. There's just so many guys, but I don't want to leave anybody out.
Yeah,
Anyway, what was I supposed to say?
your
My time?
finish time and your place. Yep.
Okay. You guys, my goal had been to break 10 and I ran 9:36:22. Really, I was just running out of my mind that day. I don't know how that happened. I don't know if there will ever be a better JFK, but I'm willing to try. I believe I was 344th overall, and I'm so proud to say that put me at 58th female. So I did get one of those top 100 gold medals. You just never know how you're going to fall because the field has been getting faster over the last couple years. But when I saw that was 58th, that also made me pretty proud. So, and will I come back next year? I think I already answered that.
Oh, so I ran.
No, I said I don't know if I can do better, but I'm going to try. So that was
Oh,
my
yeah.
answer.
So I ran 6 hours, 46 minutes, and 28 seconds, which was good enough for 37th place overall. I was a 33rd male, and just like Chris, I was fourth in my age group. So we shared that in common, I believe. So I was not overly ecstatic with my overall time, but I was really happy with the way I responded after, having a rough AT section and responding with a faster. This was my fastest ever marathon during JFK on the towpath in the 6 years that I've done it. So I was really happy with that. All right, the last thing I want to talk about before we do our final thought here is I just want to touch on the golden hour again. So again, I know I said last time that was my favorite part of the race, and I will echo that again. Being out there from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And after the race is over for me, go inside, get cleaned up a little bit, and then come back outside, and we're just cheering people on. If you are a runner at JFK and you finish, I would highly encourage you to get cleaned up, get warm, and then stick around if you have the energy for the golden hour. It is just exciting to see those people come in after working hard all day long, and they need that encouragement to get to the finish line. So it's I mean I don't know how else to explain it. It's exciting, and it gives me energy just being out there. Like some people are like, how are you jumping around and cheering people on after you just ran 50 miles? And I don't know, it's just something about like helping those people that have been working so hard just to get to the finish line. It's fun and exciting. So I just wanted to bring up the golden hour again and encourage people to come out if they have the chance next year from 6:30 to 7:30 and come out and cheer people on. So uh I think we had maybe one more thing we were going to talk about before we do the after party, and that was our recovery, real quick. So, Chris, how's recovery going? I mean, it's only been like 2 or 3 days, but how's it going?
Brutal. Just brutal. I have managed to keep my running streak going, but you know, day one on Sunday was just barely squeaking through 2 miles at JFK pace or a little slower. My quads have been super sore, so I've been spending a lot of time in the compression boots and just trying to get those legs healthy again. Tonight was probably the best I've felt of the 3 days since, and was out there running in the rain a little bit, but still only managed about 3.5 miles before I was like, okay, it's time to go rest a little bit more. So, but
Yeah,
hopefully by Thursday we'll be ready for the turkey trot, right?
right. All right, Katie, how about you?
I didn't feel so bad the first 2 days afterwards. I mean, normal, like tightness through the hips and things, but nothing too painful. Um, Today was actually the worst day for me whenever I did keep my streak going, but I only did 1 mile each day. So my third day, third mile since JFK, and it was probably the most painful, which I think most of the lower body is getting better, but it was just the one part of my quads that usually does bother me directly after one of these ultra marathon or marathon distances. Just hurt today. But I think now I am hoping that was the bottom and now I'm going to be on the upswing after this. Because usually what happens is Wednesday's a little bit better. And then Thursday, when I start the turkey trot, I feel almost like normal. And then I go full send on a turkey trot that I should just be like literally trotting. And I get about halfway through and I'm like, oh crap, what have I done? But I got to finish it now. So, and Adam, how about you?
Yeah, I started a pretty dumb tradition a couple years ago, and that was to run my JFK finish time in miles. So Sunday, I went out and ran 6.46 miles, and it was not fun the entire time, but I got it done. And then took it really easy Monday, took it really easy today, even though I did run 6 more miles, but easier pace. And my legs are coming back and trying to beat my son on Thursday in the turkey trot will be fun. So we'll see what happens. All right. I think we've gone through all three of our races for JFK. A lot of hopefully good insight into what each one of us was thinking on each of the sections on the course, and how we were inspired through the day to get from Boonesboro to Williamsport. So I think now we're going to jump into the after party, and we'll try to keep these answers a few words. Okay, Katie?
Deal.
Deal. All right. Chris, are you ready?
Ready?
Perfect. All right. So here we go. We just have a few questions. These after party questions are all about the JFK 50 miler. So we'll go Katie, Chris, and then Adam. What is the toughest mile of the course?
38 was hard for me this year.
38.
You guys threw me for a loop there. I had no idea you'd say that. I'm going to say it's like mile 3 to 4
Okay.
going up Lamb's Knoll. All right.
Okay.
The most clutch gear item that you brought.
Can
Do you want
I
me to go first?
skip this one? Yes.
Okay, I'm going to say my shoes. All right, go ahead, Katie.
Okay, I'm going to go with shoes too because I had the same ones that Adam did.
Okay, Chris.
For me, it was the vest. It was my lifeline of having what I needed when I needed it.
All right, what was
Yeah.
Katie, what was your lowest moment on the course?
38 probably. Just trying to get through Taylor's Landing. That was the lowest.
There must have been something to it because that was the same for me. Getting from Snyder's to Taylor's seemed like it took forever.
I swear they moved Taylor's Landing. It was no longer there, or it was at least a few miles further because I didn't know that it was ever going to come. But yeah.
All right, for me, it was coming down Weaverton, just knowing I was behind last year and I had a lot of work to do to make up. All right, what was your highest moment, Kate?
The finish line, for sure. Finishing in that time and the big hug you gave me. Definitely.
I'm going to cheat and I'm going to use two. One was mile 49 when I saw my split was sub 9 and I was cruising into the finish line and going to make it. And then the second was watching all of our friends finish and just being so excited for how well everybody did on the day.
And mine was in the gym afterwards. I got to have a conversation with Hans Troyer and took a picture with him and Mike Spindler. So that was probably one of my highest moments, not necessarily on the course, but afterwards. It was a pretty cool moment that I haven't talked about yet. So, all right. What was the biggest surprise of the day?
My marathon on the towpath, for sure. Being able to sustain the pace.
Let me guess, Chris.
I feel
Same
like-
answer as Katie.
I feel like I'm copying off of Katie's paper here. For me, it was getting to Dam 4 and being so many minutes under where I was the year before and knowing that it was going to be a good day.
The biggest surprise for me was I don't know. I think coming down off of Weaverton again and just I don't know, having to knowing I had to rebound. I just kind of was out of it until that moment. So that was it wasn't like it was I was my normal racing self. So that was kind of the biggest surprise to me. All right, Katie, did you fall?
No, I did not.
Chris,
No, no falls for me.
all right, yeah, and I luckily did not fall either. So what pace felt like you were flying? So like you were doing an all-out mile maybe or running a 5K.
While Katie's thinking, I'll jump
It
in.
prob
For me,
yeah.
I was going to say, for me, it was when I turned the corner at Sheets and went down that hill. I felt like I was light as a feather, just cruising down through there.
Mine has to be the last mile. I should not have been able to run that fast, but my last mile was sub 9. It was an 8:55 pace. So that
Yeah.
felt like flying at mile 50.
Yeah, and mine was just the pace on like the first mile of the towpath. You get on there and you're able to run. You got brand new shoes on, so and that was probably like a 7:02 mile, and that felt like flying. All right, what was the first thing you ate after finishing?
I think it was a sandwich, the sandwich and pretzels that they had there.
Okay, Chris.
For me, I don't remember the food, but I do remember I immediately went over and got in line at the Cloud Splitter coffee truck and got myself a large hot coffee to recaffeinate and get ready for the after party.
I do want to say the pizza at the after party was amazing. That was spot on.
And I also had a sandwich from inside the cafeteria as the first thing that I ate. So, all right, that concludes the after party. Want to end with just two quick announcements. So, I know we kind of talked our way through the course. If you were not at JFK and you want to get a better feel for the course, you can watch the live stream on Mountain Outpost on their YouTube channel. Just search up JFK 50 miler 2025 and you can watch the entire race on their YouTube channel. And then next week, we are going to bring on two special guests. And no, they are not both Katie Lowe. We are going to actually have two other guests on the show. They are Becca Good and Robert Kelly. They are golden hour finishers this year in JFK, and both of them have also finished in the golden hour in 2 or 3 other years. So they have different experiences during the race than a lot of other people do. They go out there and they work hard for 12 to 13 hours, and I am extremely excited to talk to them and hear their story of the 2025 JFK. Katie, anything else that you would like to leave us with before we sign off for tonight?
No, I just want to say that I can't express how special this JFK was enough, and I hope that came through in everything we talked about, how much the day was wonderful, we enjoyed it, and mainly that was due to the people and the people in the community, the race directors, the race management team, the volunteers, the spectators. Everybody was just so wonderful.
Chris, how about you?
I would just encourage anybody who's even thinking about the JFK that when the race opens up in March, sign up. You can do it. You will not regret it. It'll be one of the hardest things you ever do, but you know what? We're supposed to do hard things. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, that's right. So again, I mean, I just want to emphasize how uplifted I was and how inspired I was by all the people that we know who ran this race and how amazing it was to see all of their accomplishments. So if you want to be inspired, run the JFK 50 or come out and cheer or crew for somebody. It's just an amazing, amazing experience. And I'm just excited to talk to Becca and Robert next week. So in between this podcast and the next podcast, if you haven't seen the race before, I encourage you to watch the live stream, as I plan to watch the entire thing tomorrow, just to kind of get a feel for how the race went from the front, and just kind of get some more information on it. So we are looking forward to that. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see you or talk to you next week. That's all for today's episode of Tales on the Towpath. Thanks for joining us on another run down memory lane and along the C&O. If you've enjoyed the show, be sure to follow, share it with a friend, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep your pace steady and your stories flowing.